And we're back again. Guess who's back? Back again. Gabby's back to stretch and fold, my friend. Look at this. Looks great. Well, folks, today is the day. We are finally starting to show you how to make sourdough. And I say starting, sorry, there's paper towels in the way. I say starting because it takes several days. So if you want your bread ready for Friday, you have to start considering that on like Tuesday or Wednesday if you want pretty sour bread. Of course, it doesn't need that extra 32 to 48 hours in the fridge, but it helps because it does give it a chance to, I don't even know how to properly describe it. The point is, the first step is you need a starter. Now, a sourdough starter is simply flour and water mixed together over and over on a daily basis, and it ends up basically coming alive. There's bacteria involved. I don't know if you've ever had kombucha or something like that, where it has like the active mother. This is like, think of it like the mother. I'm trying to do like really easy terms because it was so confusing in the beginning and I was like, this is overwhelming, and it's really not. I'm going to start by telling you that this starter does not need to be fed every day. It needs to be fed every day when you first start it, right, to activate it. But once it's up and running, if you put it in the fridge, it slows the process, right? So if it was on the counter at room temperature, I would have to feed this every day. But because I don't bake every day, I can leave it in the fridge and once a week take it out and feed it, and then that's enough that it's able to that I'm able to bake. So don't be overwhelmed by the idea of this starter. There are recipes online of how to make one. There's mine. Her name is Janice. She smells really good. She's got like an acid scent to her. You really don't need that much to start. That might not even be 50 grams, but all I need is 100 grams of starter once it's risen. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed her today. She's going to eat the food that I'm feeding her, rise and double in size, and then tonight we're going to take that active starter, which means she's doubled in size, and start our recipe. And instead of using instant yeast or active bread yeast like you would find in little packets, the yellow packets at the grocery store, you're going to supplement it with this sourdough starter. So first thing I need is a bigger container for her because she's going to rise up. Rise up! When you're living on your knees, you rise up! I don't know if that's going to get copyrighted. All right, this is actually a jar that I got for Christmas that gives me the like temperature gauge of how warm it is in the room, and then it gives you a last fed line, and it shows you how much it's risen. So this is like 100 milliliter, 200, 300, so it's great. It also has a little band that goes around it. It's like a rubber band. Actually, I might have tossed it. The band is supposed to be like, has the time on it, and you're supposed to line it up with this last fed line. I just write in Expo marker on here what time I fed her. So what I'm going to do is clear it out. My scale is in grams, and I'm going to put this on the scale. You can't really see it that well, but that's fine. You're just going to have to work with me. I don't have super fancy equipment, folks. I ain't making money yet. All right, here we go. Move this over. Can you see me now? Can you see it? Can you see it, Mike? Okay. So we're going to reset this to 0 grams. I'm going to take my starter, and I need I have a couple of these little guys. They're like thin baking spatulas. They work really well for this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to scrape all of her down into the bigger jar. And, ooh, she is tiny. All right, we got to feed her extra. Most of the time, if you want to feed your starter and then bake, you'll do what's called a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So this has 35 grams of starter. I would normally do a 1-to-1-to-1, which would be 35 to 35 to 35. 35 starter, 35 water, 35 flour, bread flour. I use King Arthur bread flour. That makes a big difference what kind of flour you use to bake your sourdough. And for the starter, don't use semolina. I used semolina to feed my starter last week thinking, oh, I wonder what this will come out like. Semolina flour is super, it makes it super hard, because semolina is used for pasta. If you watch my video on the Pinocchio's pantry, that's where I got the flour. So anyway, this is 35 grams. It's not, like once I feed it, 35 plus 35 plus 35, I'll hit my 100 grams, but I really won't have anything left over for like next time. And I want to make sure that I keep feeding this mother. And sometimes to strengthen her, you want to double up. So you want to do 1 ratio of starter and 2 ratio of flour and water. So in this case, what we're going to do is 2 ratio of the flour and water. So 35 plus 35 is 70. Thank you, Father Dearest, for teaching me my times tables. Okay, so we're going to have 70 grams. So I'm going to reset this. And at my sink, here, you're going to just come with me. I'm so sorry. This is so not, I don't have my microphone. It's first thing in the morning. All right, so this is my water that I actually drink out of regularly because it's just flavored. It's filtered water that's room temperature. And I used to like really cold water, but sometimes I just like room temp water. So we're going to go ahead and fill a cup with some water. I really don't need that much. That's actually probably too much. And I'm going to feed my starter here. Someday I'll have enough money to get a second camera and then I won't have to do that. Okay, so reset it. Make sure you zero it out. And we're going to do 70 grams of water. This doesn't have to be like as accurate as when you're baking. When you're actually making the sourdough recipe, and we'll see later in this video, I'll show you the exact measurements. That's when it really counts. So this is 71 grams. We're good with that. I need a sip of water. I haven't drank any water today. All right. So I'm going to mix this and just get that starter nice and mixed in with this water. Because right now, it's just kind of floating there in the middle of it. And it needs to be like almost melted down, right? I try to mix it off of my scale so that I'm not affecting my scale. Mix it up real good. Are they still making videos? I hope they are. God bless them. They were so sweet. Okay, this is all mixed in, and the piece of starter has kind of melted into the water. So now I've got like a milky white water. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and put her back on the scale. And this is going to require 2 hands. I'm going to reset this, and I got to go get my bread flour. This is my bread flour. I keep, this fits like a 10-gallon bag that I get from, or 10-pound bag that I get from BJ's. Dang it, my Band-Aid's coming off. So now we're going to do the same thing. 70 grams of the bread flour into my little vial here. And you'd be surprised how much more in volume. Flour versus water. Hello. Perfect. 70, 69. Come on. Little more. Perfect. All right. 70 grams of bread flour. Now, factors that will vary your starter, okay? How much you're feeding it, right? If I do a 1-to-1 ratio, she's going to rise faster than this one, which is a 1-to-2-to-2. But you do want to do a 1-to-2-to-2 every once in a while to strengthen it. At least that's what I was told in my daily bread classes. It also matters how warm it is in the house, right? So in my kitchen right now, I think it might be close to 70, but I turned the heat down to save. This is me using water on my finger to scrape the excess down because it is very sticky. So my place is probably going to go down closer to 65 throughout the day. So this will probably take all day to rise and double. And what we're looking for is I'm going to make a line with my Expo marker. Actually, it looks like it's about right below that 200 milliliter line. What we're going to do is this is why I'm starting this in the morning. We're going to let it sit for the day and it's going to rise. Variance for this piece of the puzzle. Temperature in the kitchen matters and how much you feed the starter. So if you feed the starter every single day and it sits on your counter, that baby's going to rise very quickly, right? But if you put it in the fridge and then you take it out and it's cold when you feed it, it's going to take a little bit longer to rise. Temperature in the kitchen also affects it. When it's closer to 73, 75, it rises really fast versus my kitchen is around 66 to 68 degrees in the winter, so it takes a little bit longer. Plus, when you feed it more than 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, so this is a 1-to-2-to-2, it's going to take longer. I have also heard online that people say it should look like a blizzard, like a DQ blizzard when you mix it. It doesn't come out when I flip it upside down. That, honestly, even though I knew it wouldn't do that, that still made me anxious. Okay, so we're going to say it's right around that line. because some of it's creeping up the side. And what you're gonna do is cover this with something that can allow air. I got this top that came with this little container, which is great. I'm gonna cover it and put it over on the other side of my kitchen. That's where it sits for the day. And we're gonna come back at hopefully in the evening, and it will have doubled in size, and then we can get started with prepping to bake our sourdough. Okay, we are back. It is several hours later. It's evening now. It's 6 p.m. and I believe I shot my last video at 8:30 this morning. So, starter has risen. Check it out. And she actually rose more than double, probably because I doubled how much I was feeding her. So again, I did a 1:2 ratio because I only started with 35 grams of starter. And so I fed her 70 water and 70 bread flour. She's gonna hang out right there. I'm gonna get all that I need, and then I'll walk you through how to create this recipe. All right, so this is just 4 ingredients. We need our starter, we need water, we need bread flour, and we need salt. I have this tool that helps me to mix everything, but honestly, you could use a spatula. Just make sure there's not a lot of rings on your spatula because it is very sticky. And then again, I have another one of these little tiny flat spatulas that I use. Now, I don't use a fancy mixing bowl. I actually just use these containers from the Dollar Tree. They're McCormick, and they are, I guess, like, it says 80 ounce, 10 cups is the top of it. See the other side. I don't think there's any other measurements on it. So they're just really, really big containers. They come with lids, and they come in a pack of 2 at the Dollar Tree. You don't need anything fancy to get her done. But it helps that it's see-through because I can see as it's rising. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on my scale. I'm going to zero it out. And I keep my recipe on the fridge right here. So it is 100 grams of starter, 350 grams of water, 500 grams of bread flour, and 12 grams of salt. So I will go ahead and measure 100 grams of starter. And now my starter, as you can see, if you've ever seen those videos of like starter active, it starts to bubble. It kind of looks like it's spider webbing. That is a nice risen active sourdough starter. And she smells good. And so it's actually not that much. There's just a lot of air bubbles. Again, hard because I only have one camera, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and measure out 100 grams of starter. This is where precision's a little bit more important, or it is important, because it can affect how fast it will rise. One time I tried 50 grams, and even after sitting all night, it did not rise, but that was also, I used the semolina flour, so made a mistake there. That's 90, and there's 99. I'd rather have a little bit more than a little bit less. So it's probably gonna put it at 102 or 103. Perfect, 102 grams of starter. That's all that's left, and that should be enough for me to put in a smaller container. Once I'm done with all this, I will put this in a smaller container and put it back in the fridge. And basically, unfed starter is discard. So what happens when you're feeding your starter is usually you're gonna end up dumping half of it to feed it again, because otherwise if you keep feeding it, it's just gonna keep growing. So when they talk about discard recipes, they're talking about the half that you would normally throw away. You can reserve it, but it is unactive starter. Discard just means starter that has not been fed, might have been sitting in the fridge for a couple days, even a couple weeks. I guess it'll last that long. So just so you're aware, because as a newbie, I had no idea. All right, so I zero it out again. And now I have to add 350 grams of water. This is room temperature filtered water. If you use cold, it will take longer to rise because it's all about temperature here. And if it's too hot, it will kill the starter. So room temperature is preferred. That's 354. Kind of want to get rid of a little bit of that. Just a little bit too much water. There you go. 350, perfect. Okay. So now I'm just going to take it, and the same way we mixed it earlier to help dissolve the starter into the water is exactly what we're going to do here as well. I've seen some people start with the water and then put the starter in afterwards. I don't think there's any particular way that you have to do it. Again, there are definitely multiple variations. I think it's Sourdough Mama. I don't remember the exact website. I'll put it down below, where the person who taught me how to do this got her original recipe, and where I will go if I'm looking for variants of recipes. It might be Sourdough Pantry Mama, something like that. All right, so that is nice and mixed. Again, you're looking for like that milky consistency. Most of the starter has been, if it's not all dissolved, that's okay. Mix it up real good. And now we're going to add 500 grams of bread flour. It's amazing how many times I've baked this and I still don't remember it off the top of my head. This is where you need to be aware of how much flour you have left, because I have gone and fed my starter and then realized I don't have enough to actually bake a full loaf. And it's going to require several spoonfuls, several scoops, because the flour is much lighter. 450. Now, a lot of people will be a lot more precise with their flour. I'm on the money with 500 grams, but the part that comes next is where there might be the most controversy in the comments, and that is I will use a little bit of this flour again before I put it in the oven. Some people will only use rice flour towards the end because they worry that any more flour, any more water could affect their sourdough. It doesn't seem to affect mine. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mix this up a little bit and add my, actually I'm gonna add my salt now before I'm not even gonna zero it out, because my salt has been very finicky with me. And you want 10 to 12 grams of salt. Actually, my recipe, I just call for 12 grams. And be careful, because sometimes like sea salt is a lot less dense, so it takes a lot more, versus this is regular table salt. I'm already at 508, 509. The last time I dumped this, I dumped it way too aggressively because I thought it was like the Himalaya pink salt was also very light. And I dumped like 18 grams and I was like, well, I guess it's gonna be a salty loaf. Okay, so now we have all 4 ingredients in there. Now we're gonna go ahead and mix it up. And this does not want to close. Yeesh. This is Gabby's chaotic baking show. So this is gonna mix up and it's gonna get super sticky. And I will show you what it looks like once I'm done. Again, I don't have another camera angle. Ooh, flour flying. But all you're looking for is to mix the ingredients so that they're just combined. Okay, we're not looking for perfect. We're looking for something called shaggy dough. And I'm definitely gonna need a little more bread flour because I just threw some out. It helps if you put flour on your hand as well, because what's gonna happen is this is gonna get super sticky, just like that. And this will be covered. And so the only way to get it off is to either scrape it using a little bit of water on your fingers, or a little bit of flour on your fingers will prevent it from sticking to your hands. So we're gonna go ahead and mix that up just barely. Perfect. I also like to scrape all the excess stuff off the inside of the container, because sometimes the dry stuff will stick to the top there. And this is my same container that it's gonna rise in, so I wanna make sure that everything is kind of combined well. This is the part that people are like, stretch and fold, how many, how often? There are, again, several variations of this. I'm gonna just teach you what I was taught because it worked for me. All right, here's all these pieces. Again, if I wanted to make sure that it didn't stick to my fingers, I could put a tiny little bit of water on my fingertips, and that would help it all come off without sticking to my fingers. Perfect. So there's my shaggy dough. It is just barely mixed. In fact, I do want to go in there and kind of use my fingers a little bit because the edges are not completely mixed. There we go. And there is our shaggy dough. All right, so now my shaggy dough is all good. And now this is the part that takes the longest in the stretch and fold portion. And this is gonna be that we have to let it rest for an hour just to absorb and mix all together, and then we'll start our stretch and folds. So you're gonna cover it and set a timer for 1 hour. I'll see you then. Okay, we are back. As you can see, I put a sweatshirt on because it's getting a little chilly in here. I have let the dough rest for an hour. So now we're gonna begin our stretch and folds. As you can see, the water has been absorbed and it looks like it's coming together. Still shaggy, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab it from underneath, pull it up, and stretch it over. And that's what a stretch and fold is. And basically you're just gonna do that a handful of times until you feel the dough have more tension, and it gets harder to do that, right? So when you first start stretching and folding, you're gonna be able to feel it like stretch really tall. And then after doing a couple of them, it's gonna get tight and taut, and it's not gonna be as easy. And that's when you kind of know it's ready. And then we're gonna let it rest for 15 minutes. Whatever timing works for you, but the idea is to get 4 to 6 stretch and folds in within a 2-hour period. So it's 7:30 now. I want to be done with all of my stretch and folds before 9:30 p.m. and then we're going to let it rise overnight. So that is what we're doing now. I'm gonna get my hand a little bit wet because it's much easier to do that when your hand is wet versus when it's dry. Everything sticks to your fingers. Okay, so my hand is wet and I'm just gonna go in, grab it, pull it up, fold it over. Grab it, stretch it up, fold it over. And it literally looks like a book fold, like the whole thing has been folded over in half. Take the other side, and now you can see that it's starting to give me a little bit more pushback. See, now the whole thing comes out and fold it over. Probably I can get 1 or 2 more in here. See how this is now tighter and it's not dropping so easily? Fold it over. And maybe 1 more. I think that's all I'm gonna get out of this one. And so now it is pretty tight and, oh, my fingers got a little bit sticky, but overall pretty good. You can see it's kind of in a tight dough ball now. And there's my first stretch and fold. So I do 4 of them. And I do 1 every 15 minutes, and that seems to be enough for me. In this instance, we can do 5 just to be safe, but I'm gonna set a timer for 15 minutes and then I'll be back. And the other thing that I do is I will use a Post-it note and I will put S and F and I'll put a line for every time I do a stretch and fold because I can never remember how many I've done. I get sidetracked during those 15 minutes cleaning and doing other things. And so I always write on a piece of paper how many I've done so that I know when I've done enough. I'll see you in 15 minutes. All right, we are back with our second stretch and fold, and Mike almost broke my timer, so that was nice. It is now coming together nicely. The dough has formed. It's a little more solid and smooth instead of being very like the shaggy dough. And you're just gonna, again, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. There is a lot of tension on this. See that? Can barely wiggle it. So that's how I know we're good. So I'm gonna fold that over once and we're good. Only a couple for the several other sets of stretch and folds. I'm gonna go ahead and mark my little Post-it with 2 and I'll see you in another 15 minutes. And we're back again. Guess who's back? Back again. Gabby's back to stretch and fold, my friend. Look at this. Looks great. Starting to come together really nicely. It is getting very difficult to stretch and fold, and that's exactly what you're looking for. The fact that I'm doing this so hard and it's not really moving much means that the tension is pretty much built. That's crazy. This is only my third too. I don't even, maybe I'll wait a little bit longer between these two. All right, there's my third set. Honestly, the next 2 stretch and folds are gonna be about the same. So you can either stay and watch those because I'll record them for you, or I'll put a timestamp here. You can skip ahead to the next step if you don't feel like watching another 2 stretch and folds. And we are back for our 4th stretch and fold. Yeah, I think 20 minutes might be a little bit better because it gives it time to like have a second to actually settle so that you can do more stretch and folds. But now we're getting to the point where it's already pretty tense. So only 4 or 5 really does the trick. Yeah, I can't really do much more than this one and then I'm done. And that's exactly what it starts to look like, just a round ball, very smooth. We'll come back for 1 more in 20 minutes and that will put us at 9:05. That will be done with 5 sets of stretch and folds. Pretty good timing. Okay, we have come to the end of our stretch and folds. I wet my hand once again, and I'm gonna go ahead and stretch this out and fold it over. And it is pretty tight, so I'll probably only get 3 or 4 of these in here this time. Let's do this one again. And can I get 1 more? See that? That's what we're looking for. Just stays in one big ball. And apparently my cat's hungry, if you can hear him crying in the background. So now what we're gonna do, this is not staying folded. I'm gonna flip it a little bit so it stays folded, there you go. And now we're gonna let it rise. So what I like to do is, it is 9 o'clock at night. I time my bread so that its first rise or its proof, it's overnight on the counter. Be careful as you move into the summer months, or if you keep your home warm, because this is very affected by a couple degrees difference. I think we had our heat on to like 72 one time and it rose a lot quicker. We're keeping our heat around 68, 66 right now. So this will probably take 10 to 12 hours to double in size, and that's what we're looking for. Now, here's why I like this container, okay? Right now, the dough is pretty tight, and so it's kind of curled up in a ball in the middle. You can't really tell where it is in terms of rising. But I know that once it settles down, it's gonna go out and fill up about 1/4 of this container. So what I'm looking for is in the morning that it rises to the midway point. And in fact, see if I can find it for you. This little dip in the middle of the container, that's kind of the line that I gauge off of. And I think even last time I baked my bread, it didn't even reach that point. It was kind of a little bit less than that, but it still worked. So that is now all set. We're done with our stretch and folds. We're gonna let it rest overnight, and I'll be back in the morning with you for the next step. Good morning. It is 6:30 in the morning, and this has risen very nicely. I'm actually glad. Mike turned on his light in the next room and I scolded him for waking me up, but if I slept in anymore, this would be very overproofed. So what you're looking for is doubling in size, and or, because it may not always double all the way, bubbles like this, that shows air pockets, and then the top is going to be a dome shape, and it's going to be a little bit wiggly jiggly. And when you see how it kind of smoothly starts falling? That's perfect. So what we're going to do, and some people will use rice flour for this part. I'll use a little bit of bread flour because it's totally fine. And you go ahead and gently guide her out of her little, yeah, that looks great. And you can see she's webby and airy. Very, very nice. Now, what we're going to do here is we're basically going to fold it in on itself and create tension, and then lay it in a basket for its second proof. And its second proof, to get that tangy, beautiful consistency of sourdough, it's going to go in the fridge for up to, I think it's like 36 hours is max. I usually keep it in for like somewhere around 12 to 24. But you're basically going to lay out your dough, gently stretch it out, flour your surface a little bit into like almost a rectangle shape. And I'm going to get my camera dirty with my flour hands, but I want to show you what this looks like. Okay, so that's my rectangular shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it on top of itself so that it's one long strip and it has 3 layers. And then I'm going to roll it on itself. And of course, I can't do that and hold this camera. Again, flour your fingers ever so gently. People say too much flour will really mess it up. I don't know if I believe that. It seems like mine does pretty well. If you were going to add inclusions, this would be the stage that you add inclusions. So people will add things like, I don't know, dried, like meats, cheeses. I've seen people do like sweet breads. I don't really know. I've done only a couple. So there we go. So now I have this big, long, almost like a calzone or pizza roll or something. You're going to take it with your fingers and just gently fold it in on itself and roll it. And I've got some really good bubbles here. And now I have almost this little, like, you see how there's a roll here? So now what we want to do is we're going to do this candy cane motion. We're going to go up, around, and down and tuck it in on itself. And I do need a little bit of flour on I have this little baking mat my sister got me for Christmas. This is great. So we're going to go like this, like pull and push. I don't know, whatever you want, up and down. And what you're going to look for is you're trying to create tension. I got to be careful because this is getting messed up. Create tension on the top and keep those bubbles, but tuck all that excess stuff on the bottom. I don't know why this is sliding around today. Maybe I'm being too forceful. There we go, nice and gentle. Oh, look at that bubble. Dang. It's got some good bubbles. So this starter is super active, doing really well. I think doubling that recipe yesterday was a good call. So what you're looking to do is, again, tuck it under, because you want to get rid of all those layers. And sometimes I'll pat it from both sides, because honestly there we go. Okay, so I'm tucking it under. Get rid of the excess flour here. Let's see your other side, girly. Are you golden? Couple more tucks. And what you're looking for is the surface of it to be tense, and there's bubbles. Pat it, give it a little tap, and she looks pretty good. So there's some big old bubbles in there. What I want to do now, she could have been almost over-approved if I waited too long. Okay, so we are good now. Created tension. Now what I'm going to do is place her in I have a baton bowl, baton, I don't know, however you say it. This is the bowl that I use. You do not need to be fancy with it. You can use any old bowl. Just make sure your bowl is big enough to hold it for the second cold proof. I believe you can also skip the cold proof and just let it rise on the counter for an hour and preheat the oven and cook like that. But of course, you're going to miss that sour, tangy flavor of the sourdough. The longer it stays in the fridge, the more it gets to ferment. So we're going to take I have these, I don't even know if they're under shower caps on Amazon or what, but I found these covers for the bread bowl. You can also use a tea towel, or I guess parchment paper, and we're going to take her gently and flip her. And this is what she looks like, just so everybody can see. Look at that bubble. Oh, that's great. Flip her over. Oh. And now she's going to kind of spread out. So I want to pinch and fold. So I want to pinch her and fold her over a little bit just to create a little more tension in the bowl. And bring that back, because she did spring out. Sometimes the person that taught me, she would say you can let it settle for 15 minutes and then tuck her. But I've never had to wait. It's always come out fine, even if I just did this, as long as you can see that you're actually folding her over and creating a little more tension on the top. And that is what's going to help with getting a good rise out of it. All right, there we go. And now I'm going to take another cap or a tea towel and cover it. So that's going to protect it from losing any moisture in the fridge. And now I'm going to put her in the fridge for the cold proof. And it is 6:30 a.m. on Friday morning. I don't think I'm going to bake this one until Saturday morning. So I think I'm going to wait 24 hours. So we will be back tomorrow, and we'll finish up this video and I'll show you how to bake it. Welcome back, everybody. It is the next day, and it's been over 24 hours since I last recorded. It is now 1 p.m. on Saturday, so we're going in about 30 to 31 hours that it has been in the fridge on its second proof. It's cold proof. That's really going to improve that sourdough tangy flavor. So next step is to preheat the oven, and you want to preheat the Dutch oven that you're going to be cooking or baking the bread in. So I will actually take this and put it in the oven, and I will preheat it with this inside so that it's very hot when I start to bake. What I actually do is preheat the oven to 500 degrees, and we're going to bake on 450, so you want to make sure that you preheat on 500, and then of course when you actually go to put the bread in, that you lower that to 450. And the total bake is going to be about 45 minutes. We're going to take the bread out once this is preheated. I usually give it around 20 to 30 minutes to heat up nice and hot. We will take the bread out. I'm going to show you how to flip it out of that banneton and score it so that it doesn't crack awkwardly. We can pre-score it with a little razor. Be really careful with that razor blade because I've cut myself with it before. And then we're going to go ahead and place it in the Dutch oven. It's going to go for 30 minutes at 450, and then I'm going to take the top off. Take your top off. Bake it at 410 for another 13 to 15 minutes. Some people will take a thermometer and actually measure the temperature once it comes out. I have one somewhere, but honestly, it's 45 minutes in the oven like that is usually pretty spot on. I've never had an issue. Mainly you want to check for temperature if you have inclusions, because especially like liquid or wet inclusions can affect how long it takes to bake. So definitely want to make sure you get that internal temperature to the right degrees. And when I come back, I'll let you know what that correct temperature is. I think it's around 200 degrees, but I'll be back in half an hour once this is preheated and we'll get it ready to bake. All right, we are back. It has been a little more than half an hour and the oven is definitely preheated. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready and get everything that I need. Now, I have a pack of 2 of these slings, and this is what I use to transfer the bread in and out of the Dutch oven. But if you don't have these, you don't need them. You can use parchment paper. Basically, what you wanna do is get the parchment paper ready, and then you're gonna pull the bread out of the fridge. And here I have my bread with my cover. I'm gonna take the cover off. Just the top one, not the bottom one. They're getting stuck. And basically what we're gonna do is flip the bread over. I'm gonna get my rice flour and just put a little bit of rice flour on top. I have one of these little, it's for pastries, for like putting the fine powdered sugar on top of the pastries, but it works perfectly with the rice flour. And basically I just take a little bit of rice flour and put it on the top. And then again on top of this little sling. I'm going to flip the sling over, just like this, and take the bread, flip it, perfect. And so now I have this nice loaf laid out on my sling. We're going to go get my little razor to cut the ear into the bread. You can use a regular knife for this. I find that these razor blades are easier because they just cut through the bread a lot better. The colder it is, the easier it will be to cut. And also be careful with these things. I have really messed up my finger because I put it here and the razor blade slid back and sliced my finger. And then the next day I did it again with the other finger. So I had 2 Band-Aids on both of my index fingers at one point because I didn't learn my lesson. You can either go in and do a crisscross basic, or you can do an ear with some cute little lines. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some rice flour. And we're just gonna do a crisscross to be easy. So just go straight down the middle, cut it, and then straight across, cut it. And my blade is probably gonna have to be replaced soon. I'll show you what this looks like. So I just have a nice cut in the initial layer, and you can see the inside of the dough start to come out. And this will allow space for it to breathe and rise, and it won't like crack. It'll have a nice crust at the top that'll curl up as it bakes. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put on our oven mitts to be safe. I have definitely burned myself a time or two, so I have nice big oven mitts. I'm going to take out my Dutch oven, which is nice and hot, with the lid, and I'm going to lower the temperature to 450 just to get it ready. We're going to grab the sling. Again, you could just use a regular parchment paper if you want, and you're just going to lay it right in the bottom of the Dutch oven. Now, see how the edges of my sling are hanging out? I want to, some people will tuck them in. I'll just put the lid on and just make sure that the lid pushes them outwards and that they don't fall in on themselves. So the edges of my sling are now outside, and now I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven, and we're going to bake it for 30 minutes at 450. So now that it's in the oven, we're going to give it 30 minutes at 450 degrees, and we'll come back after 30 minutes, and we will take the lid off and lower the temperature. All right, it has been 30 minutes at 450, so we're going to go ahead and take the lid off. Oh, she looks good and risen. I'm going to close it up, and I'm going to lower the temperature to 410, and she'll be done in 15 minutes. Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes. Our second timer just went off, and she is all ready to be taken out of the oven. So we're going to shut it off, put my crab mitts on, my crab claws, and take her out. Let's see. Okay. She's split a little funky, but really well risen and looks really good. Let me show you. So you can see that I must have cut one side deeper because of the way that it split. See how this is super wide and then the other one's barely cut through? But that looks great. So what I'm gonna do here is, the best thing with sourdough is to let it sit and cool for at least an hour before you cut into it, because it's still technically baking inside there at temperature. And if I cut it too soon, it will end up like gummy. So that's one thing that I messed up the first few times I baked sourdough, is I cut into it right away when it was hot. I know it's like apple pie, like you want to cut right into it because it smells so good, but letting it sit and cool is the best decision. So you're going to pull it right out. Look at that. That looks great. And I'm going to let it sit for an hour. I actually have to run some errands. And I don't think we're going to eat this loaf. I think we're actually going to give it away to my father-in-law possibly, or sister-in-law, somebody else, because we do not need any more bread in this house ourselves. That is how you bake sourdough. Really easy, really simple. I forgot to put the temperature down below of what temp it should get to internally, that you know that it's cooked, in case you want to use a thermometer. But yeah, that's how you bake sourdough. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week.